Welcome into episode 259 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian D. Fleece, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Our first episode of 2024, Bridget and Scott. And it comes at a good time. The Bruins are on a 3-game winning streak after what was an ugly week plus of hockey leading up to Christmas. Dating back to, the Sabres game? 4-1 win over the Sabres. We discussed that one. 5-2 over the Devils, 5-3 over the Red Wings. So the offense is getting going, and it seems like they're getting contributions from up and down the lineup right now, and they're playing with some good energy and some grit right now post Christmas.
Yeah, they are. And to me, my opening shift is that one of the key developments has been the Marchand-Coyle-DeBrusk line getting hot. All three of those players were scuffling a bit heading into the Christmas break. Coyle and DeBrusk had each gone 6 games without a point. Marchand had, I think it was 1 goal in 7 games and no 5-on-5 points during that time. It seems like they kind of killed 3 birds with 1 stone, putting them all together. I think individually they're all playing better, and there's chemistry that hasn't always been there, with Marchand and Coyle in particular. And we've talked about that. I've talked about that before, how there are times earlier this season that it just didn't seem to be clicking with the two of them. And you thought it should, and maybe it could at some point, but it really wasn't. And now it finally seems like they're getting comfortable playing together and figuring out how to work off each other. They've both talked about that, saying like, yeah, sometimes sometimes chemistry comes right away and it's match made in heaven. And sometimes you have to work at it, and they've had to work at it, and they have, and it seems to be there right now. And, and DeBrusk has fit there alongside them really well too. So they scored a key goal in the New Jersey game. The goal that really launched the comeback after they were down 2-0. Marchand sets up DeBrusk, and then another key goal against Detroit after Detroit comes back to tie it 2-2. It's that line that ends up scoring early in the third period to give the Bruins the lead back and kind of right the ship.
Yeah, and my opening shift has to do with a different line that's come together since, things have been shuffled. So my opening shift is about Trent Frederic, who maybe had the nicest goal of his career in the Detroit game. His first of 2 goals that he kind of just poked in, lifted top shelf on the backhand. And we were talking about this a little bit ago, like what's Trent Frederic's best goal of his career. And I feel like I watched that and I was like, there he is. That one's a good one. He wanted the hat trick. He was going, I don't know if you guys saw it the way I did, but I thought he was chasing down Zacha's shot into the empty net to try to tap it in at the end, but he didn't catch up to it. Because it looked like he was trying to, get one little touch. Hat trick would have been good for him, but he's been playing well. Helping out a little bit at center, but mostly playing wing on that third line with Merkaloff there.
Yeah, Frederic's just seeming a lot more comfortable with the puck on his stick, and he's making things happen, looking to make plays as opposed to just, being a player out there, which is, you're watching the real-time development of a player. Obviously 17 goals last year and just building off it this year, which is great.
He just looks confident. Like just looks so confident in that Detroit game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what experience at the professional level does, and you realize you can score goals at the NHL level, and it's amazing what happens. And his skating, like I said, the puck on his stick, he's just making things happen. He's using his size, and he has those long strides, powerful strides. So, Frederic, I mean, look, I think a couple of years ago, not to dive too much into your opening take, Bridget, before we keep going, but like I just remember a couple of years ago, like we were kind of losing hope on the player who was like 24 at the time. He wasn't like too young. And now it's like a couple calendar years later, and he seems to be somebody who could put in 20 goals a year for this team. At least. So that's a great development. I'm gonna piggyback off of Scott's opening shift and focus on DeBrusk. And obviously he's been a focal point of mine this year. And we talked about him last episode as a player who was on the up. And a lot of people would have said he's been up all year except for the points, but unfortunately, it's a results-driven business, and when you're paid to produce, you have to do so. And now that he's doing that, now he deserves, maybe he's getting rewarded, but he deserves the attention, the positive attention now as well. And Scott mentioned the New Jersey game. It's like Jake DeBrusk scoring that goal. Granted, it's off of a hard forecheck from Brad Marchand, who kind of starts the whole play, and DeBrusk obviously finishes it. But that's a play where if he doesn't finish that, it's possible that the Bruins lose that game because you're down 2-0. And instead, he goes to the net hard. Wink, wink. That's how he scores goals, and he finishes and gets the Bruins on the board, and they end up winning the game, kind of running away with it. And that's the impact that you can have when you're somebody who can do that, and you do that. Obviously, not every game, but with 5 points in his last 3 games, he's up to 16 points in the season, and that number is starting to look better and better for him. And if the Bruins, the biggest reason I was upset with DeBrusk's lack of production, despite analytics saying that he was playing well, regardless, like if this team wants to be where they want to be in the postseason, as long as he's on this roster, he has to produce like a top 6 forward, and he wasn't, and he's starting to now, and that's really important for this team going forward.
Yeah, and we talked to him after the New Jersey game in the locker room, and he said, really the whole team used the Christmas break as a chance to reset, obviously coming off the 4-game losing streak, but he also used it individually. He said he kind of relaxed, watched Christmas movies, and like had a good time.
And Harry Potter. And Harry Potter.
He said his go-to Christmas, his go-to Christmas movies were Elf, The Grinch, and Harry Potter, which I'm with him. Like Harry Potter isn't obviously technically Christmas movies, but it counts. And there's always a marathon every holiday anyways. So, but yeah.
By the way, those are solid choices too. Those are solid.
I thought he watched Harry Potter in the offseason. That's why he had the invisibility cloak on the whole time until recently. I'm joking.
Brian.
I'm just kidding.
He had to.
I had to say. I'm just kidding.
But yeah, obviously he had to find some way to get going. And so if Christmas break reset is what it took, then that's great. And, new line mates that I think he feels good about playing with. You just see, obviously I've been on the side of like, he's still doing more good than bad. And to an extent, I always thought the scoring would come, but I have said like he has to make it come. And part of that, like you said, Brian, is him going to the net. It's that drive, like to see, that lane was there, but to see him see it, take it. And what I really loved about that goal he scored in the New Jersey game was he's tapping his stick for the pass, from like banging his stick for Marchand to get him that puck. And it was like, you could tell like his eyes just lit up when he saw the path he had to the net. And that's exactly what you want. Like you want him being aggressive. You want him wanting the puck in that situation, wanting to make that drive to the net. And it was clear that he did. And if he's going to play like that, then he's a huge asset to this team. And you just hope, obviously, that it continues. Bridget, you're
sorry. The chemistry I was saying that none of you could hear. I was saying the chemistry also applies to Coyle with that line as well. Like I noticed on that Coyle goal in the Detroit game, him and Marchand seemed to be on the same page a few times. Coyle almost scored earlier in the game as well. And we've seen them each set each other up for some really good chances. And Coyle's was in the slot, but that one was set up by McAvoy. But you just notice like them finding seams and knowing where each other is on the ice a little bit more now after a few games together. And I've thought that the chemistry has grown and looked better. Yeah, no, Coyle's been really good. I mean, I forgive me for not having it in front of me, but just obviously his totals on the year. But his finishing is very, very important for them. Obviously, he hasn't been I wouldn't call him a proven finisher in this league up until
this year. Like, he obviously has finished to his game, but it wasn't consistent, and they needed him to be that for them this year. And yeah, you've seen him just get body position in tight and have some nice finishes up top this year. And yeah, just again, like, they needed him to step up this year. And Coyle's been great. Like, say what you want about the Bruins at given times this year, he's been rock solid. He did have about a week or so of I think, Scott, you mentioned last episode he had 5 games at a point, but yeah, he's just been really solid for them.
Yeah, he's up to 13 goals, 13 assists, 26 points in 35 games. Third on the team in points, tied for second in goals, and on pace to smash his career high in goals. His career high in goals is 21. With the Bruins, he's never scored more than 16. Like, he could pass that in 2 weeks. Not even halfway through the year. So he's on pace, for what, high 20s, maybe even push 30 goals. Like, if you told anyone going into the season that Charlie Coyle's going to be on pace to push 30 goals, like, that is a huge win. I don't think anyone would have expected that kind of jump. And, Montgomery talked this week about Coyle adopting more of a shoot first mentality and getting to scoring areas more. And he pointed to those 2 goals. And I know they're on the power play, so that's a little different. Like, he does play that role on the power play, but still, it's just that mindset of, like, being there and being ready to shoot. And Montgomery said, like, how many times was he there last year? Like, he's going there more, and that's why he's scoring more. And again, you can take that and apply that to DeBrusk too. It's like, if DeBrusk goes to those areas more, he's going to score more. So very encouraging that you're seeing, both of them doing it. You're seeing Marchand producing with them. And that, if those guys continue to click, it just really goes a long way towards solidifying your top 6, because it's like, that's at least one of your top 2 lines, and you can lock that in, and they can play in any situation. They've been great defensively all year. That hasn't been an issue. It's, are they going to score enough? They are right now. And then you can kind of figure out the first line from there, whether it's, whether it does ultimately stick with Zach on the wing, and it's either Geeky or, some rotation of centers before you settle on something or make a trade or whatever. Or if Zaka goes back to center and you figure out the wing there, like, at least you have this Marchand-Coyle-DeBrusk line in your pocket, and something that you feel good about.
Yeah, when you said solidify the top 6, I'm thinking to myself, and when you were saying, who would have guessed that Coyle would have the numbers that he has at this point in the season, I was thinking, who would have thought Morgan Geekie would be centering the top line at this point in the season? And that's what he's doing right now. So, whether he stays there or not remains to be seen, but he's done a good job. And like we mentioned, Zaka going to the wing may not be their long-term plan, but it works. Especially if the plan is, when Poitras comes back, just to slide him in between JVR and Frederic, and send Merkulov back to Providence. So that kind of feels like what the setup might be when World Juniors is over. But a few things I want to talk about that line to get back to my first shift, if you guys are ready to switch subjects. So I want to bring up some of Frederic's numbers, actually. So he has 4 points in the last 4 games, and I was just going through, like, some of his career, like, season stats, and he's also been getting more ice time on average than any of the previous seasons. So he's averaging, like, about 13-15 of ice time per game. And he was a +4 in the Detroit game. He was really buzzing, and he had those 2 goals. And he's looked really good recently. And it seems like we're seeing it coincide with a noticeable jump in confidence as well, because I was thinking to myself several times during the last 2 games that he's kind of driving the speed of that line. And now obviously JVR is the veteran on that line, but you can see Frederic taking ownership of, like, the pace and the confidence that he brings to that line. So you see this, like, maturity in his attitude, and you also see the numbers going with it.
Yeah, and, like, obviously Geeky got his his face caved in there a little bit by Ben Sherratt, and Frederic scores the goal. And then immediately with Sherratt standing there before he doesn't even celebrate scoring the goal, which is the first goal of the game, just immediately challenges Ben Sherratt. And after the game, he was asked about it. And I guess earlier in the game, they were talking, and Sherratt said something like, you're not good enough for my attention or something like that. And so when Frederic scored, he's like, am I good enough now? And then proceeded to score another goal, I think, using Sherratt as a screen, potentially. So yeah, when Frederic is emotionally, and this goes for a lot of players, but when Frederic is emotionally engaged, every game he's really effective. In fact, there's a stat out there, and I don't have it in front of me, but I remember seeing it recently. The Bruins have a ridiculously strong record, like almost impeccable, in games that Trent Frederic scores a goal. So I think that shows he's an emotional leader for the team when he's out there and he's on his A game.
Yeah, for sure. I loved challenging Sherratt there. That, like, at first I was like, I assumed Sherratt yelled something because he collided into Alex Lyon, which was clearly like completely accidental. It's, Lyon's well out of his crease and Frederic's finishing his chance. Lyon ended up being okay, fortunately. But yeah, I assumed like Sherratt yelled something then and Frederic just responded. But it's even better with the added context of like that had already been bubbling up earlier in the game.
And also the fact that he said you're not good enough for my time, and then he scores twice and like just makes you look stupid. It's like Frederic won that one. Like, you can trash talk, but sometimes it backfires on you.
Yeah, it's funny. It was probably like, a couple weeks ago, and in the locker room after practice one day, and someone asked him about like trash talk, and he was like, yeah, there's not really that much of it that goes on out there. And, we were like referencing back to, I think it was his rookie year or second year when he got into it with PK Subban, and like that went viral with the mic'd up moments and stuff. And, for Frederic clearly is like someone who will engage with that and like kind of thrives off it when the situation arises. But yeah, he's been playing great. Bridget, to take, those recent stats, like to go even a little further, Frederic only had 3 points in the first 12 games this season. Now he has 15 in the last 23. Like, that's a legit middle six, like pushing second line type production. He's now up to 9 goals on the year with the 2 on Sunday, which puts him on pace to surpass his career high from last year when he had 17. I know, one of the questions we kind of wondered about was like, what is Trent Frederic's production going to look like if he's not on a third line that has Charlie Coyle and Taylor Hall, which, was as strong of a third line as you can get really in the NHL. He's continued to produce after a little bit of a slow start. He's right back there, and he's doing, on these last couple of games, he's doing online with, a rookie center playing his first 2 games, Ben Riemsdyk on the left wing in one of the games, Danton Heinen the second. Like, that's not a Charlie Coyle Taylor Hall line. That's a line that he has to help drive, and he is.
And not for nothing, he's also like the only tough guy on the team right now. Well, I guess you could throw Lauko in there, but not for nothing. Like, the team we mentioned, there was about a full week where we were talking about how the Bruins needed to, potentially even add physicality by making a move at the deadline. And Frederic is, once Lucci obviously got arrested and hasn't been back with the team, Frederic kind of has been, in Lauko at times as well, like has fought, but those two are the only guys that really stand up for the team. So to see him putting up the numbers and being, willing to also fight for his teammates and himself and be physical, it's a big season. So far this year has been great for Trent Frederic.
Yeah, it's, as time goes on, it's it's unfortunate from a hockey perspective that Lucic got into trouble off the ice, and obviously, it makes sense why he's not around the team anymore. But because like the Bruins
stuff is still at his locker, and it's been
say
there
that again.
His stuff is still at his locker, and it's been there the whole time.
When people say a team lacks toughness, I think it's easy to think right away to like body checking and fights and whatnot. There's definitely a lot more to being a tough team to play against than just that. There's just back checking, forechecking, going hard to the net. Like there's a million ways to be a tough team outside of fighting, but it definitely feels like if Lucic was there, the Bruins aren't an overly tough team as it pertains to fighting and extracurricular. But if Lucic was on the team and you can throw Lucic out there and Frederic out there as primary guys to fight if need be, and then you can have supporting characters after them, they actually would be a pretty tough team. Obviously, Lucic isn't there, so Frederic has to wear that more for the team, and yeah, he's just been a good player for him. And when you watch the Bruins in person, I know you two are fortunate enough to watch them just about every game at home, but for listeners, if you're lucky enough to get to a game at any point, like Frederic in person, you don't realize how much space he covers. I don't know if TV does it justice. Like his strides are very long, and he's a big body that when he's on his game, he covers ice pretty quick, and he caves into guys and plays the body. And it's you gain an appreciation for his play out there when you see him live and in person, more so than other players.
Yeah, and he has definitely improved over the years as a defensive player to the point where he's one of their most reliable forwards defensively. And that kind of ties into like the space covered, because that's what when a couple games recently where he shifts to center, it's kind of seamless because he already does a lot of that work as a wing. Like even you watch these last two games where he's on a line where Merkelov's the center, but it's Frederic who came back deep in the defensive zone and basically played the center position defensively quite a bit. Like you would see Merkelov like higher on the zone covering a point, and that's just Frederic's experience. And if he's the first guy back, he's going to take that role, and not every forward has to, if they're the first guy back, they have to take that role to start in the defensive zone. But then usually you're looking for the switch once the actual center gets back. And I think with Frederic, you see him just take on that role until the puck's out of the zone. And like, he's not looking for Merkelov to switch with him and he goes out to the point. Like he'll just do that work because it is like second nature to him now. He's gotten so good and so reliable at it.
Yeah. And it does, like, you can see how he, like I said, he kind of took ownership of the line, and that's kind of just an example of him kind of making the decisions and defensively, offensively. He also transitioned the puck himself for that second goal. Like he's been decent at just carrying through the neutral zone as well. So we've kind of touched on all, like pretty much every aspect of his game that has been going well for him recently. And in particular in the last two games against New Jersey and Detroit. I do want to talk about Merkelov though, because he got his call up. He got 2 games with the Bruins, back-to-back nights. And, the time on ice in the first game, he got 15 minutes, but he only got 8.5 minutes in the second game on New Year's Eve against Detroit. And I know he was not getting a lot of time on ice in the third period of that game against New Jersey at home. But what have you thought of him and the usage? He didn't get a chance to show himself all that much, getting, kind of fewer opportunities maybe than he would have hoped.
I liked his game so far. I think that there's an adjustment, obviously, and I think he's trying to learn on the fly. He's, everything he does at the AHL level, he has to do that much quicker at the NHL level. That said, watching him against New Jersey in person and then obviously on TV against the Red Wings, he definitely doesn't seem to lack confidence. And you can see his hockey IQ is there. So obviously he didn't score. He hit the post against Detroit, and I'd like to see him get a continued look here. And I think that with confidence, like he'll get some points for this team if he gets a longer look. So Scott, feel free to jump in there. And I think as far as like the usage goes in the third period, I don't love it. I think if you're at the NHL level, like, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to drag on too long about that. I don't love it. I think it can be a little bit much at times to just like take players out of the rotation completely for a period. I don't love it, but I've liked him so far.
Yeah, he had another good chance against Detroit too, which actually ended up being his first NHL shot on goal because he didn't have any in the New Jersey game. But Lyon made a good block of save on him, and it was, I think it was Frederic who set him up, and he had like a ton of time, and you could tell like his pass first instincts kicked in. He sort of like looked around and then realized like I'm all alone in front. I have to shoot, and it was a good hard shot, just a good save. So I think that'll start to come more naturally, more of a shooter mentality. You see that with, he's always had a really good shot. I remember talking to Coach Rolick at Ohio State about him when the Bruins signed him, and he's like, yeah, he has a really good shot. I think he scored on like 25% of his shots in college, which is obviously not sustainable, but he was like, I wish he used it more. He's always looking to pass. And that's been something that's, continued to develop and certainly has in Providence, where he's become a go-to goal scorer. So if he can kind of get in that mindset at the NHL level too, that's going to be huge for him. As for one other thing I noticed is like he seems to always be in the right spot. Like I thought his puck support was really good. He seemed to be where his teammates needed it and expected him to be. As far as not playing in the third period, it's similar to what we've talked about with Matt Poitras, right? Like it's the same sort of conversation. And I'm on the side of like I don't really have an issue with it. I just think coaches at all levels, oftentimes shorten the bench and 1-goal games, leading or trailing. And if you're leading, you go with your 9 best defensive forwards that you trust the most. And if you're trailing, you go with your 9 best offensive forwards that you trust to go and create offense. Again, like if we're talking about this down the stretch in March and April, and whether it's Poitras, Merkulov, Beecher, whoever, which by the way, like Beecher wasn't out there in the third period Sunday either. I would be a little more concerned about it because they'd be like, geez, they've had all season to kind of grow that trust and learn what they have to learn in these situations. And either they haven't or Montgomery still doesn't trust them. Like I would have an issue with it then. Right now, his first 2 NHL games, I just don't. Like I think he's still learning a ton. It's still extremely valuable for him to be up here. And the Bruins aren't secure in the standings. Like they're still trying to win every game and get every point that they can. So if shortening the bench is part of that, then I just don't have a big issue with it.
I want to bring up 2 other stats too that he had in that Detroit game. He had 11 shifts total, and his face-off percentage was 16%. So that part,
face-offs have been a struggle in both games for him for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely something that you noticed out there. And obviously there's a learning curve going from playing guys in the AHL to some of the craftier centers in the NHL. It's a difference in timing. So that's to be expected. And Matt Poitras had trouble with it too, adjusting as well. His face-off percentage at times has been similar. But yeah, 16% was not very good. I know they put Frederic in to take draws at certain points as well. And yeah, so just to bring those 2 things up. And I don't know what you guys think about, how much longer of a look is he going to get?
I mean, I would say at least until Poitra's back, which, could be by the time Poitras flies back and then the Bruins are going on the West Coast. Like to me, that's probably at least you're looking at least another week. So, whatever that comes out to, 3, 4 more games, and you got to see where he is from there. If he's playing really well and he's earned a spot in the lineup, then you keep going with him. And if it's going to be like this, where it's okay, he only played 8, 9, 10 minutes, and there's stuff they still want him to work on, and they're seeing some flaws or whatever, then you send him back and you say, here's the bullet list of things we want you to work on. And I think that's fine, but I'm definitely excited to see what he does over the next few games, though.
Yeah, I mean, Speaking of Matt Poitras, by the way, the a sigh of relief. I mean, he literally gets now onus on the player for turning that quick, but that was a very dangerous result against Germany, where he got hit from behind to the boards, like neck first, and it's like that's obviously that goes far beyond anything Bruins related. We're talking about somebody's health in life at that point, but again, like just back to like what I was talking about a few weeks ago about just like if he's like yes, there's risk in Bruins practice and Bruins games, but like it's to go play for Canada and have unnecessary risk to get hurt. Like I mean that could have ended really badly for Matt Poitras personally, and obviously that would affect the Bruins lineup. So bullet dodge there. How has he been playing for Canada down at World Juniors, and where does the tournament stand right now?
Well, so Canada lost 2-0 to Sweden, and Poitras had a tough play on the first goal where puck comes up the boards, he's the forward there trying to get it out, and kind of just softly chips it right into the defenseman pitching down the boards, and Sweden scores like a second later. I think it was a shot that Canada's goalie should have saved. And if you get that save, then no one's talking about Poitras' play, but the whole Canadian team got shut down in that game. Sweden's really good, although then Sweden did get lit up by Finland, surprisingly. And then the Germany game, another game where just Canada overall was underwhelming, but they ended up getting the win, and Poitras got an assist on what ended up being the winning goal. It was on the power play, and he had a chance in the bumper. Just a golden opportunity. He got robbed, but the rebound went right to I'm forgetting which teammate it was, but buried the rebound. So, overall, he's not dominating, which I think obviously everyone's hope would have been like he goes over and dominates, and he's one of the very best players in the tournament. I think it's been a little up and down, but you make your name in the knockout round, and now they're at the knockout round that starts Tuesday. Canada's playing Czechia in the quarterfinals, so he's still playing that second line role, so they're still relying on him. But yeah, I think you would have wished for a little more, but I don't think he's been bad by any means. I just think it's been some ups and then some quiet games.
Yeah. And he said before he left for the tournament that he pretty much had never played for or met most of the guys on the team. So like, it's obviously chemistry doesn't happen overnight. And for a center, that can be pretty important, especially him as a playmaking center. We always talk about him, how good a passer he is. So, and also on that goal that you're talking about where Poitras tries to chip it up the boards and doesn't get it out, I felt like the broadcast and everyone really put a lot of blame on him for that when it was clearly not only his fault. And I was just thinking like, well, the pass could have just been a clear out of the zone. The goalie could have made the stop. They kept putting the camera on Poitras like it was 100% his fault. And I was like, I feel like we're putting a lot of blame on him here when this could have been there was like three guys that could have definitely made a play.
He's learning what it means to play for Team Canada. When you do anything wrong, the entire country turns on you.
Oh my God, they were brutal to Norway. Those Canadian broadcasters were freaking brutal. They're like, Norway doesn't belong in this tournament. I'm like, okay. They're really just crapping on them hard. Yeah.
No, Bridget, you're right though. The broadcast, it was like some SNL skit. Like literally every like 2 seconds, it would just go back to Poitras. It's like he's like just skating to the bench still. Like nothing's changed. Yeah, I mean, look, Scott, you mentioned it's all about the medal rounds, and that's fair, but I think it's a little bit more than just the medal rounds. I think you have to look at the entire tournament, how one plays. But I think, short of him maybe scoring a golden goal or having a couple of key moments, if it's more or less this for him the rest of the way out, even if Canada wins gold and he's more just kind of along for the ride and not really showcasing or stepping up, or if he's not one of the best players on Team Canada in general, then I think the Bruins have to kind of look at it and say, probably didn't get enough juice out of the squeeze here. Because if you're sending him there to World Juniors and he's just kind of along for the ride and doesn't really dominate, then I don't really know what the point of it. Not that they could have predicted that. I'm just saying, they'll be a little disappointed probably.
I think it's valuable regardless though, because like even even if he doesn't dominate at any point, and it just continues to be like a little bit inconsistent, I think that's a valuable experience for him to be like, hey, here's how tough it gets in big time games on a world stage. Like, it's going to be even tougher than this in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So, like, here you've seen now, how you have to raise your compete level and raise your game, and hopefully, if it ends in disappointment, he would come back and be like, wow, okay, now I know, like, I have to get to another level. Like, I went over there thinking, probably feeling pretty good about myself. I'm the one with the most NHL experience, and it didn't go the way I wanted. So, like, that's something to learn about himself from, and not the worst thing in the world to have. Again, if it ends in disappointment, he could still win gold and be a hero. But if it ends in disappointment, like, I'd rather that first disappointment for him on a big stage come in World Juniors than the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I still think there's value there in just having this learning experience in general. So, and I'd also, again, I would also point out, so much of Team Canada is first round picks. Like, in terms of pure talent, prior to a month or two ago, you would have said, like, most of that lineup has more pure talent than Matt Poitras does. It's a credit to him that he's put himself on that radar and put himself in the NHL, but it's not, again, like, this is still his age class. It's not like he's 3 years older than everyone and has been playing at a higher level for years. Like, he was he was just on these guys' level last season. So
yeah, and he obviously jumped past what the Bruins were expecting, and on the world stage too, he gets he gets on that highest level with those other first round guys like you're talking about. Also, if you're watching, the sun is once again coming into my face. Like, if we record at this time, I just end up with like the sun in my eyes. So it's coming. It's like slowly coming. But do you guys want to talk about the defense at all? Because Mason Lohrei, who's another pleasant surprise for the Bruins in how many games he's played, how he's done on the ice. The Lohrei-McAvoy pair, which at times when Scott and I were up on the ninth floor for that home game against the Devils, I leaned over to Scott and I said, I think Lohrei is the better defenseman on that pair today. And I thought he's looked well.
I couldn't agree more. Every game that he plays, he just seems to be more and more comfortable. And it's not even so much like the transition game or whatnot, because, it's not like every game he plays. It's not like the latest game that he plays is the best game he's had in transition or whatever. But like, just from a comfortability standpoint, taking hits, receiving hits, being physically engaged in the dirty areas. I think that's improved since he first came up against Toronto, whatever it was, 20 games ago. So, I mean, obviously injuries are always a thing. And I think that because of injuries, he'll always have an opportunity to be with the Bruins pretty much all year if they really want him to be. But regardless of injuries, I think he should be on the Bruins at this point anyway. We kind of touched on that last week.
Mm-hmm.
I just think he's been really good, and it's he's continuing to learn each game, and that's all you can really ask for.
He's played 18 games at this point. I don't know if you guys thought like he would continue to, first of all, he got sent down, but he really wasn't back in Providence very long. It was maybe like 2 weeks or so. And then he came right back.
I think it wasn't even like 2 full weeks. It was like a week and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he does continue to look more and more comfortable, and playing with McAvoy obviously is, it's a good spot for him. And at times he's looked, we talked about how McAvoy's been down a little bit, but Lohrei looked really good on that pair. And I really kind of thought he looked better than McAvoy in that New Jersey game. But the Bruins really dodged a bullet. That McAvoy's injury in that game was just a stinger where he crashed into Linus Ullmark. It looked bad at first, but he comes back and he plays against Detroit and he's fine. So it's just like a stinger that lasts however long and then it goes away. And that could have been really bad, but they got Grizzly back against New Jersey too.
Yeah, and with Grizzly coming back, like, I think Lorai's not just making a push to stay in the lineup, but to stay in a top 4 role. And that, Grizzly came back. He played in the third pairing Saturday. Got a game off Sunday because Montgomery said he was feeling a little sore after that first game back. I don't know if they were planning on playing him the second night of a back-to-back anyways. He might have sat even if he wasn't feeling sore. But yeah, like that, if Lorai can stick in the top 4, I don't want to force it if he's not ready, but he's playing right now like he's ready. Like he might be able to handle that role. And if he does, that looks so much better because like his upside, as we've talked about, is higher than Grizzly's. Like no matter what you think of Grizzly, Lorai, in part because of his size, his skating, his offensive ability, like it's higher than what Matt Grizzly can give you in a top 4 role. So if he is making that jump and he's going to stick, like that, it makes your decor so much stronger because now you can either go Grizzly, Shattenkirk on the third pair, or if there's games you want a little more size and heft back there, you put Wotherspoon in, who I think has been playing pretty well too. So it just makes you deeper, gives you more options. And however, right now it's Lorai McAvoy and they've kept Lindholm Carlo together. I could also see at some point maybe you give Lindholm McAvoy some time, Lorai Carlo we've seen in the past. But regardless, like your decor just on paper and on the ice looks better if Mason Lorai keeps playing like this.
Yeah, and we're talking as if like Derek Forbert's not available because he still doesn't look like he's very close to returning. So that injury has been long term, and it looks like it's going to continue. So, what did you guys think of the Grizzly Shattenkirk pair?
Terrier magic.
Yeah,
Terrier magic. Yep.
I mean Shattenkirk, just got his 100th goal I think in the NHL, and then got his 101st a period later. But yeah, I mean. It's kind of an ideal third pair, like a guy who can move the puck. Well, actually, they both can. But I was gonna say one guy's got a veteran presence, but Grizzly's been around too. I like him. I know we have to kind of get going soon, but yeah, I've liked what I've seen. Definitely, I think they're both where they should be. I think they're slotted where they should be on this team. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really have much to add there. It's like I said, like just the and both of those guys can defend too. Like I know you look at Grizzly Shattenkirk and you think like puck moving defenseman, but Grizzly in general has been solid defensively, and if he's getting third pairing matchups instead of first pairing matchups, like I absolutely think he can handle that.
One final question for the two of you, approaching the midway point here. You look at a team like the Devils, and you're wondering why they're not where they should be roster wise, and then you look at goaltending, right? Vitek Vanacek has a 3.35 goals against average and a 883 save percentage. So clearly not great. You look at the Bruins, Linus Ullmark is far ahead of that, right? Ullmark is 282 goals against average, 916 save percentage, but when you compare him to Jeremy Swayman, 2.2 goals against average and a 928 save percentage, their records are pretty similar, although Swayman had no run support in some of his recent losses. What's your guys' assessment of the goalies at this point? It seems like Swayman has pulled ahead. Does that change your perception of maybe future usage with the two of them, or is it just too early to tell that it's still half a season plus to go here?
I think Linus Ullmark still is. I wouldn't say he's like Swayman's won the job or anything like that. Linus Ullmark has come up with some incredible saves, and sometimes they're just like there's stops that most goalies can't make. And if not for that, the Bruins, because they always feel like they come at really important times too. I don't know. I feel like Ullmark is still playing so well that the rotation just stays in my mind. They're not, they're still 1A, 1B. They're still most likely just going one and then the other and rotating pretty evenly. I've liked how both of them played. It's not surprising, but Ullmark comes up with these crazy saves too that just are so impressive that you can't really, even though the stats are a little bit worse than Swayman's, like those are things that you can't see there.
Yeah, I was just trying to quickly look something up, but I agree that I'm not changing anything right now. Like the rotation continues to work, and if there's a stretch here and there where someone's a little dinged up, and you ride one of them for 2, 3, 4 straight starts, like that's fine. I don't need it to be a strict rotation every month between now and April, but they're both playing. Allmark is still clearly like top 10 to 12 in the league, even if he's slightly behind Swayman. So no real reason in my mind to get away from splitting time. It works for both of them. I think it helps both of them. But yeah, Swayman certainly is having a better season, no question about it. And I don't know if he's gonna, he's probably in the Vezina conversation. Minutes wise, he's going to be like so far behind your Thatcher Demko or Karna Hellebuck that the only way you win it really splitting starts is if you do what Allmark did last year, which is, go at like 41-4 or whatever, and just lead the league in save percentage and goals against average. So I don't think Swayman's going to do that. So he probably isn't winning the Vezina, but he's in that conversation right now for sure.
Yeah, I know they spent Christmas together.
They did.
Yeah, Swayman was Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. And it's funny because I got into this argument with I think it was Jones last year. Like they can't really be friends, right? Like they're not actually friends. Like no, they're legitimately like family. They can spend holidays together and whatnot. But
oh yeah, no, their relationship is very, very unique and very, very authentic for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we got to get going here. It seems like the Bruins have played the Blue Jackets a lot the last month. They got them again tomorrow night at 7 p.m. So we'll look forward to watching that. And Bridget and Scott, if there's anything else before we sign off here.
Nope, I'm good. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Oh, and the PWHL started today. So I was watching that before we hopped on here.
And reminder that Bridget's got the call for the first Boston game Wednesday night. Yes,
I do on Nesson. So tune in.
All right. Well, everybody keep popping that Advil and that liquid IV and enjoy your 2024. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you very soon. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.